It's the fastest, most unpredictable speedway on Earth.
Iron made this place. Mined, smelted, forged. And every spring, we gather round and celebrate. Iron sharpening iron.
Oh, he gets tattooed!
But in order to take it all home, you need nerves of steel. The big one is back. Get your tickets now at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com.
Roll Tide and welcome to this Thursday edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. This is Roger Hoover in our Tuscaloosa studios before I hit the road to Austin, Texas with the women's basketball team. It is March Madness, and we're going to have a full preview of Alabama men's and women's basketball in March Madness coming up as the NCAA tournament starts, of course, on Thursday. As we start our show, we'll take a look at everything coming up for this evening show with our friends at RJ Young. RJ Young is the official technology solutions provider of Crimson Drive. They give us a smart board to go through everything coming up on the show, plus our headlines for today. We'll start by hearing from the Director of Athletics for the University of Alabama, Greg Byrne, in one of our monthly conversations covering a lot of different topics about basketball, football as well, plus the future of Alabama athletics coming up this spring. Then we'll check in with Kristy Curry, the head coach of the women's basketball team, as we'll get a read from her on what Alabama needs to do to beat Florida State and move on to the round of 32 this weekend, plus a season recap of Alabama women's basketball. They'll be checking in with Richard Hendrix, an SEC Network and ESPN analyst, of course, and also an SEC legend. We'll talk about his experience in Nashville being honored as an SEC legend, plus he'll give his thoughts on Alabama men's and women's basketball. Then we'll round out the show by taking a look at some booth cam highlights from baseball and softball over the past week. A lot of wins to talk about for the Crimson Tide. But first, we'll start with Alabama men's basketball as the Crimson Tide are dancing once again for the fourth straight year under the direction of head coach Nate Oates. Alabama is the number 4 seed in the West region, and coming up on Friday, it's Alabama against the number 13 seed College of Charleston. Our radio coverage from Spokane, Washington will start at 5:30 p.m. coming up on Friday evening. Also, we heard the good news that Greg Byrne will detail in a few moments. Nate Oates, his contract has been extended to stay as the head coach of the University of Alabama, a sizable raise included in that, and he is under contract until 2030 with a lengthy buyout as well. So great news for Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide basketball team. And then Mark Sears, after picking up all the SEC honors you can think of, he has been named a second-team AP All-American selection. We go to women's basketball. Kristy Curry getting the Crimson Tide back to the big dance for the third time in the last 4 years, as Alabama had a tremendous season, 23 wins already this year. Crimson Tide, the number 8 seed in Portland Regional 4. That's up 2 seeds from last year when the Crimson Tide was the number 10 seed and fell in the first round against Baylor. Now this year, the Friday first round matchup against Florida State out of the ACC. 4:30 will be the start time in Austin, Texas. If Alabama wins on Friday, you would likely see the number 1 seed University of Texas Longhorns coming up on Sunday. But first things first, it's Alabama against Florida State on Friday. Radio coverage will start at 4:25 p.m. Central. And some tough news we learned. We saw the injury for Jessica Timmons against Tennessee. She has a torn ACL that was suffered in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament. So unfortunately, she'll be out for the upcoming NCAA tournament, but we look forward to seeing her back on the floor later this year for Alabama. Coach Curry will have some thoughts on who will fill the gaps with Timmons going out with injury. How about the Crimson Tide baseball team? We had a lot of fun at Sewell Thomas Stadium over the weekend on Saturday and Sunday as the Crimson Tide picked up wins against the 5th-ranked Tennessee Volunteers. With that, Alabama now in the top 10, ranked number 8, and kept the winning ways going on Tuesday, beating Alabama State by a final score of 15-7. How about TJ McCants? 3 home runs, that tied a school record, and also 14 total bases, also tying a school record, but nobody had hit 3 home runs for the Crimson Tide in 25 years in one single ball game. TJ McCants did so last night in Montgomery. Now coming up this weekend, it's Alabama at Georgia in a Friday through Sunday series. The Bulldogs were swept last weekend on the road in Lexington against Kentucky, so they're coming back to their home turf, ready to welcome in the Alabama Crimson Tide. Softball team, busy time for Alabama. Speaking of Georgia, they went 1-2 last weekend against Georgia, had a thrilling finish to their ball game on Sunday that you'll see coming up in our booth cam highlights. Now this weekend, home against Virginia Tech in a quick 2-game series, Friday at 6 p.m., Saturday at 1 p.m. We will have a booth cam presented by Country Financial for those 2 games coming up here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Some final notes from around Alabama athletics. Good luck to the gymnastics team competing at the SEC championships coming up this Saturday. And then in men's golf, another win to talk about. More milkshakes for Chase Sewell and the boys as Alabama won the Linger Longer Invitational. Back-to-back years, Alabama's won that event. Jonathan Grizz led the way for the Crimson Tide as he was the overall medalist at the event. Third team title this season for Alabama, so even without the services of Nick Dunlap, who's moved on to the PGA Tour, the Crimson Tide keep winning in golf. A lot of wins to talk about with Greg Byrne, the Director of Athletics for the University of Alabama, as not only Nate Oates, but Greg Byrne as well received a contract extension to continue in his role leading the Crimson Tide Athletic Department. Here's our one-on-one conversation with the Director of Athletics for the University of Alabama, Greg Byrne. Greg, Roll Tide, it's great to have you on. I always say this around this time of the year, but congratulations to you being one of the few athletic directors around the country, both his men's basketball team and women's basketball team selected to the NCAA tournament. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide. Thanks, Roger. Good to see you again. And obviously really happy for both our men's and women's program. Really pleased for our kids and, have the women be there for the third time in 4 years. Nate's got them back there again and with a high seed. And, I'm very pleased for the young men and young women in our program and the resiliency and the hard work that they put in to put us in this position. And now you got to go. It's one game at a time in March, right? Got to go see what they can do. But it's exciting to see the continued progress for both of our programs, and couldn't be happier for everybody involved.
Selection Sunday, an exciting day, of course, for our programs here in Tuscaloosa, but for you is the culmination of a lot of hard work on the men's basketball committee. And last year you described so well the entire process you got to go through the entire year leading up to Selection Sunday. And from what we understand, it was a long, tiring weekend for you all in Indianapolis with a lot of work.
Yeah, Coach Saban and I went to up to D.C. on Tuesday and got to walk the halls of Congress for a little while, and then Tuesday night I flew over to Indy, and then basically from Tuesday night to Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, we were in there in the committee room the entire time. A lot of hard work by a lot of people in that room. The NCAA staff. Danny Gavitt, Joanne Scott, many others, they're really top-notch people who care very much about the game of college basketball on the men's and women's side. And they deserve a lot of credit for all the hard work that they put in. Here internally for me, I've got a young man named Brett McCracken who does a lot of the analytics for me, which is very helpful. He's a lot smarter than I am, which, that doesn't shock many people. There's a lot of people like that. And Kyle Vasey on our staff, they helped me on beginning prepared. I was the primary for the Big Ten this year, and then secondary for the Big East and a few other conferences as well. But you got to watch games throughout the year. You got to be able to understand where the numbers are. There's a lot that goes into it. It's not, people talk about the net or different things like that and just say, well, their net compared to this is the, should get them ahead of this team. The net's just one of many items that we look at. And we have 12 people on the committee. What's important to one may not be as important to the other. I'll give you an example. I'm a big advocate for non-conference strength of schedule. I think that, who you play, where'd you play them, and how'd you do is really important, both for conference and non-conference. But I do think it's really important for the game of college basketball on the men's and women's side, even though I'm just on the men's committee, to see good matchups and to see that happen during the non-conference season. And so that's something that's important. A lot of people will look at, you have the quad 1, quad 2, quad 3, quad 4. So the quad 3 and 4 are the lower net teams, so to speak. Did you have some losses in quad 3 and quad 4, and how does that compare? Or did you struggle in quad 1 and did you make all your wins in quad 2, 3, and 4, for instance? And so that's another evaluation tool. Trying to understand a head-to-head, right? When one team plays another, and how'd you do? If you played one time and that was only one opportunity to measure that, that could end up having an impact on where somebody is seated. But you're not, the NCAA gives you the opportunity to weigh those things equally. When it comes to where you end up playing, I know that there's been some noise about that this week. I told the story last year when we were the #1 overall seed, and when you're the top number one overalls, you get to say, this is where I'd like to be if possible. Okay. And so last year we said Birmingham for our first and second round, and we wanted to stay in this part of the country if we were fortunate enough to continue to advance. And then I'm sitting in the committee room, and then because so much of this is computerized at this point, where based off of the principles of the committee, for instance, if you've played somebody twice in a year, I think it's the Sweet 16 is the earliest you can play them again. All right. So that moves some games around as you're going through it. BYU, for instance, they can't play on Friday, or they can't play on Sunday, so they can't play on a Friday, Sunday regional. And so that cuts off half the country where they end up getting sent to. Not criticizing, it's just reality. So there's some movement that takes place on where people are. So last year when I saw Auburn show up on the screen for Birmingham, I'm like, oh, geez, that's going to be unique. But I didn't have any influence on that. That's where they were, and that's where they were based off of the parameters from a schedule, from a committee standpoint, and how people get seated where they were. So this year, when I saw, and on Sunday, you go into Selection Sunday between Saturday night and then Sunday morning, and you have all these contingency brackets. So based off of how the Illinois-Wisconsin game finished up in the Big Ten, how the Auburn-Florida game ended up in the SEC, and the other conferences that had Sunday championship games, we had all these contingencies that I could tell you from Alabama, we had 3 different areas we may have ended up. Okay. But once those games get finished, then that's how, whatever that one contingency bracket based off of how each of the different games could end up. UAB, Auburn, and Alabama all ended up in Spokane. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. How about that? So those are things that the committee doesn't really have a lot of control over. It's based off of the parameters that take place. And I can tell you, just to kind of give you that as an example, my 3 years of being on the committee now, Alabama's ended up in San Diego, ended up in Birmingham as the number 1 overall seed, which we got to choose to go to Birmingham. And then we're back where we're in Spokane this year, back in the West again. And that's the way the brackets ended up. So it's an interesting process. People love the grassy knoll theories. I can tell you the NCAA and the people in the room are very serious. When Alabama gets talked about, I have to leave the room. I cannot have any influence at all on what is said about Alabama. The only thing I can even talk about SEC teams, because I'm the SEC representative, and I've seen more SEC games than anybody place else, right? Anybody else, because I'm the AD at Alabama. I can only talk in facts when it comes to SEC programs. I cannot talk in opinion about what I've seen physically from a basketball standpoint. I can only talk about what the numbers are and what they take place. Now, I can do that for other leagues and give opinions, but I cannot do that for the SEC. And the committee does a really good job. I kind of wondered, even going in, is there, I was guilty at times of having maybe an eye roll or two about it in the past. But now that I'm in my third year of it, the importance of making sure that those principles, the values of what the basketball committee stands for, is really done at a high level. I've been very impressed by that.
And the work really doesn't end.
There's a long answer.
Absolutely. Well, it's a great answer. And the work is not necessarily over with the selection show, right? I mean, you still have a role coming up the next few weeks with the NCAA tournament on this committee. Yeah,
unfortunately, you don't get to go to your first and second round for sure, and sometimes even if you were to make the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. So I will not be going to Spokane with the team. I'll be in Brooklyn as the tournament representative, or there's a committee representative there. So I actually head to Brooklyn tomorrow, and we'll be there for the week, and we'll be obviously having the responsibilities. And our women's game and our men's game are both on Friday, when I'm going to be at the Brooklyn game. So I will definitely have I got my iPad all charged and ready to go, and I'll be watching our games via the iPad while I'm at the games in Brooklyn.
That certainly sounds good. Well, shifting the focus back here to Tuscaloosa and Alabama, sticking with men's basketball for a moment, it was announced that Nate Oates received a lengthy contract extension through 2030, now one of the highest paid coaches in college basketball. Just what made this the right time for an extension for him, as again, you keep moving forward with Nate Oates leading this basketball program?
Yeah, we've obviously been thrilled with the job that Nate has done with the program. He knows we want him to be here to coached his entire college basketball career, hopefully only coaching career, at Alabama. He wants to be here. He's shown that with his commitment on his side, where we tried to make sure we've had a two-way street for people to understand, our fan base to understand that this is where he wants to be, and is they put down roots here. And you know, I knew shortly after, you know, when first met Nate on a cold March night up in Buffalo, what is it, 5 years ago now, and I was like, I think this guy, I think he would fit very well at our university. And been very pleased with the job that he's done. And so we want to make that commitment and just put all speculation aside and realize that this is where he will be building the program. I met with a recruit yesterday, and you know, he's hard at it, working, and he and his staff are, and just couldn't be more pleased with the job that he's doing. We got, you know, I think I don't know what interview I did, but I said we had a couple of things up our sleeve. And one of them was the contract. And so we're continuing to move forward with our program and show the support that we have for men's and women's basketball, gymnastics, what we do here at Alabama. We want to do it at a high level. And we've got the right guy to lead our program through that.
Speaking of putting all speculation aside, that includes you as well. The Board of Trustees announcing a contract extension for you through 2031. I imagine, again, that's part of the process you wanted to have in place, so making our fans rest assured that you will continue leading this program moving forward.
Well, I'm sure there's a couple of them that were disappointed with the news, but in all sincerity, Regina and I, it's hard to believe it's been over 7 years now, and from the day we got here, Dr. Bell, our trustees, Chancellor St. John, we have felt so supported. And you know, listen, I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but I've told coaches this throughout my career. I don't really think of it great when coaches try to leverage you. And I like it when people, you know, we were proactive with Nate, for instance, right? Didn't see this whatsoever in that manner as a leverage, because there wasn't one. But you know, I got to make sure I follow the same principles, and so Alabama is where we want to be. I'm 52 now, and my hope is that we get to finish our career here and want to be here. And you know, I'm right outside my office door. There's a picture of all the former athletics directors at the University of Alabama, and yeah, I think people know how much I admired and loved Mal and Coach Moore, and how good he was to me. So to be able to be in his office means a tremendous amount, and the responsibility that comes along with that. And obviously Coach Bryant was the AD for why he was the football coach too. And it's a real honor, and I feel very fortunate, and we have felt very, very supported by all of our leadership. And it's actually Dr. Bell's birthday today, so give him a shout out of a happy birthday. But I couldn't ask for a better president to work for, and just, we very much love it and appreciate our fans. I mean, the power of the University of Alabama, and you know, I travel a lot. I'm all over the place, and a lot of times when I'm traveling, I try to wear something Alabama. And I mean, I get so many roll tides. Some people know who I am, some people don't. And this is such a special place, and it's the people that are watching and listening to this that make this place so special. And one of the things I've said this is, you know, we bring everybody together, and we check our differences at the door, and we come together for the University of Alabama, and the young men and young women and our fans and our coaches and our staff. And I mean, it's just, you couldn't ask for a better place. And we feel very fortunate to be here.
Feel very fortunate for your leadership, and it was especially tested earlier this year in January when Coach Saban announced the news that he was retiring, and you have the task of finding a new football coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide. If you could, just how did you kind of prioritize everything in your next steps as you started the search that ultimately led to the hiring of Kalen DeBoer?
Well, one is, we wanted, since the day Regina and I came to town, our focus and as a department was to make sure we did everything we could to support Coach Saban, Miss Terry, and have him coach our program as long as he physically and mentally and wanted to do it, right? And he you know, his you know, getting a chance to work with Nick Saban for me will always be something that I cherish the rest of my life. And you know, just I mean, he's going to go down as one of the greatest coaches of all time of any sport. And it's amazing. And obviously I didn't know Coach Bryant, but obviously we understand that he made an incredible impact. And we've had others, you know, Coach Stallings won a national championship, and Coach Wade and Coach Thomas. And so there's such incredible history here, but the here and now was that, is to try to support him as long as we could. But at the same time too, he deserved the right to retire. And, you know, I want to retire at some point. We all want to have that opportunity. So with that, and when he and I talked on the day before he announced his retirement, you know, I decided at that point, when the conversation was going where it was, I said to him, I said, Coach, I feel like I need to fill you in on a little bit just behind the scenes stuff we've been doing, hoping we'd never have to execute on the plan. And so I actually have a box sitting next to my desk here that's been there for about 3 or 4 years. And it's a lot of information and plans and background work that we had done. Again, hoping we never would use it. But Kalen DeBoer's name came on the radar screen a few years ago. And I remember when he took the Fresno job, because I believe at the time he was replacing Jeff Tedford. Now Jeff Tedford is back there, he's back there now. But I'll tell you that Jeff Tedford is a heck of a football coach, and it's somebody I've known for a long time and admire. And I was like, if he hired Kalen DeBoer as his offensive coordinator, it's like he must be a really good football coach. And so we started. You know, he was one of many names that you would just do some research on when time would allow. But I also knew, because of the transfer portal and the world that we're in right now, it was going to be a different approach than even, you know, I think about when we hired Dan Mullen at Mississippi State 16, 17 years ago. And, you know, I think it took us 10 days. And I just knew that wasn't going to be something we could do at this point, that it had to be in a much more efficient time manner. And so we were able to get very focused on him early. And we were very fortunate that he had genuine interest in the job here. And we went out to Seattle. Coach Saban announced his retirement on Wednesday. I had some meetings here internally that we did as soon as he announced it, and just trying to encourage the team to stay together. And I couldn't be more proud of the leadership that we had on our program, both from the team, but we also had some people internally that we met with to help be boots on the ground, proactive conversations, not reactive conversations, during the time that we were out looking for the coach. And so we moved quickly. Coach Saban was awesome. I couldn't have asked for better communication, better support from him. And so now we sit here with Coach DeBoer and really excited about the future and what's ahead. And so it's something that we never wanted to have to go through, but I was pleased overall with how it went. We had great support from Dr. Bell, our trustees. Mike Brock is the chair of our athletic committee, and I was able to talk with Dr. Bell and Mike Brock through the process, and they were nothing but supportive. So very much appreciate the leadership across the board there.
And in the 2 months since Kalen DeBoer has made it to Tuscaloosa, what's impressed you the most about how he set up his organization, getting spring football started? Just what have you liked seeing out of him so far?
Well, he brings great energy, brings a tireless work ethic, which we were used to that, obviously, with Coach Saban. And he's very thoughtful. I was just in a meeting with him before I came down here to do this interview, talking about a few different things. And he's a really good listener. I think he's having great connectivity with the kids, which is obviously something that Coach Saban was so good at. And the energy out at practice is really good. I've only been able to go to 2 of the 3 for about a half hour each time. We practice again today, and I'm going to try to stop by for a little bit as well. And but I think I've watched and I've engaged with our team in the weight room when I've been in there. You know, they're throwing around their iron, I'm throwing around Tic Tacs in the morning, and anyways, it's something that I just really appreciate the way he's embraced what the University of Alabama represents. And I think, and the story's been told several times, and it's the God's honest truth, is that when I asked him the question, how do you feel about being the guy that will replace Coach Saban? And often you hear you want to be the guy after the guy. And he said, man, there's only one person that's ever going to get to do that. What a challenge, what an opportunity, what an honor. And I'm going to embrace Coach Saban and also embrace what the University of Alabama represents and the guys on our team too. So, and I was like, man, he couldn't have answered that any better that day. And so anyways, really pleased with what he's bringing already early on.
So a lot of hard work by Coach DeBoer, and even Coach Saban in retirement certainly has been active. You mentioned earlier you and Coach Saban got to go to Washington, D.C. last week to meet with some lawmakers, talking about the future of college sports, not just NIL, but kind of everything going on with college sports right now. Why was it important for you and Coach Saban to go to Washington a week ago?
Well, Senator Cruz invited Coach Saban up, and then they invited me as well, and gave us a chance to talk about what's going on our campuses. I was really impressed. Obviously, it wasn't because of me. It was because of Coach Saban being there, but I think there were 8 senators that came through during our time there, including almost all the ones that have been genuinely engaged in what does college athletics look like in the future. Senator Blumenthal, who's been very active in this from Connecticut, I was able to explain to him and to the other senators and the other people there the investment we make in the young people in our program. Not just athletically, but how we invest in them medically, academically, nutrition, the personal development, all the different things. And I threw out some numbers of what we do spend on that, not counting any salaries. And they were impressed. And I had one of them come up to me afterwards and say, I'm really impressed with what you all are doing to support the young people in your program and that you genuinely care about who they are, which we do. I'm proud of that. Okay. And they said that we need to make sure everybody else is doing what Alabama's doing. And so I took that to heart. The other thing I introduced in the conversation after we were talking about the impact that an unregulated system will have, not could have, will have, and the outcome of what's going on from a litigation standpoint. And we tried to offer some solutions to offer some protection, both from an employer status, from an NIL, from a Title IX status. And one of the ideas or examples I gave is that there are intellectual property policies on university campuses. So if you have a professor, you have a student that generates something that allows for revenue to come from that invention, that is shared with the university. And so the example I gave is that if you're a chemistry student and you create something that leads to a new invention from a pharmaceutical standpoint that leads to a lot of money that's being generated in the pharmaceutical industry, that student will get a percentage of that. If they're a poet, and poetry is important, the English language is important, okay? And they write a book or poetry that's published and there's revenue generated off of that from their role as a student, then that is shared at the same percentage often. The percentage is the same, but the revenue is different because it's based off of revenue that is produced by those 2 separate students or professors in that area. Could we create the Title IX opportunities to where it's based off of revenue generated by the sport? And I have all the sports behind me, right? I do that on purpose. So when I sit down at my desk, I think about our 21 sports, our 600 plus student athletes, and the decisions that we make. But could there be a long-term solution that would offer NIL opportunities, or a revenue sharing opportunity that's based off of the revenues generated by the sport that we're talking about? Allow NIL opportunities, but one of the things I probably didn't go in as far with that I should have, so I'll do that here, is could it be based? It needs to be based off of market-driven NIL. For instance, when Bryce got his opportunities through BMW, through Nissan now, and then he had Dr. Pepper, and I know there's one I'm forgetting, but he had and those were based off of his marketability, which he deserved, and that was awesome. But it wasn't necessarily boosters creating that from a recruiting standpoint, because the example I give is you see offensive linemen in the NFL, not a lot of them have name, image, and likeness deals, but you're seeing a lot more of it in college. And that's creating a very challenging economic situation across the board that could impact other areas of our department, namely, and I talked about it publicly, which most haven't, because I felt we had to, how many sports we're able to compete in. That's not Alabama. That's across the board. And we need to be very thoughtful of that. Senator Cruz asked me directly, what sports are you talking about? And I said, Senator, I mean, it's not one specific sport, but I mean, it's swimming, it's track and field. And again, don't splice what I just said there and say Alabama. That's across the country. Those are going to be really hard sports that, that you're going to have to make tough decisions on, that we want to have broad-based programming, and nobody wants to have broad-based programming more than the University of Alabama, because we're having a lot of success across the board that we're proud of.
Absolutely. Thank you for that answer. And that continues this spring with basically all the sports behind you in progress at the moment, with either practice or competition. We know gymnastics has the SEC championships coming up. Obviously, baseball and softball underway.
Yeah, I had a heck of a performance against Oklahoma on Sunday, got to 198 in scoring, and now we're heading to New Orleans this weekend for the SEC championships. And we just had head coaches meeting this morning. And one of the things I do, I don't know if I have it right here, I always go in front of all the coaches. I talk about what everybody else is doing. Now, here's the agenda for head coaches this morning. And right here, I go through each sport and I talk about what they're doing well. And I've had coaches, and if you're not doing well, you're not going to get a lot of, I'm not going to say anything bad about you, but you're not going to get a lot of kudos in front of your peers. And so I've had coaches come up to me and say, man, I want to get the kudos that everybody else is getting. I said, absolutely, we want you to get them too. And but there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah, there really is. Like a sales competition. Very fun to see. We'll let you go on that. I mean, again, it's an exciting time, and we love March Madness for basketball. But again, for college athletics, really everything comes together in March. Just what are you most excited about this spring for all sports across the board here at Alabama?
Yes, college sports is one of the coolest things in our country. It is. And being around these young people who train and develop and compete at these highest levels. And Coach Saban used to talk about high achievers don't like mediocre people. Mediocre people don't like high achievers. We got a bunch of high achievers here at Alabama. And it's such an honor to get to be with the young people in our program, these coaches who work their tail off, but also our fans who care so much about it. And we're going to have our really high times, and we're going to have low times, right? It's going to happen. But the way we go about it here at Alabama is really, really special. And I just thank everybody that takes the time to listen to this and what they do to support our university, our athletic department, the young people. Yay, Alabama now. And we've made some good progress there. And we're going to navigate these choppy waters and get through this and come out on the right side of this. And I'm glad we're doing that all together here at Alabama. Roll Tide.
Absolutely. Thankful for your leadership. Congratulations on the contract extension. We'll look forward to talking to you again down the road. Thanks, Greg. Roll Tide.
Thanks, Roger.
There is nothing like Sweet Home Talladega. Don't miss out on the opportunity to witness the thrill of four-wide racing on one of NASCAR's most iconic tracks. From the blistering speed on the track to the unparalleled fan access at the Talladega Garage Experience, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Don't miss out on NASCAR's much-anticipated return to Talladega Superspeedway for the Geico 500 on April 21st. Purchase your tickets today at TalladagaSuperspeedway.com. We appreciate the time of Greg Byrne. A very busy March for him already and still coming up in the next few weeks, but we appreciate his time and the conversation. Same could be said for the head coach of the Crimson Tide women's basketball team, Kristy Curry, as Alabama is preparing for a busy weekend in Austin, Texas. Hopefully a long weekend as Alabama takes on Florida State on Friday in the first round of the NCAA tournament, then hopefully a second round matchup against either Texas or Drexel. But right now, Coach Curry is focused on the task at hand. Here's our one-on-one conversation with the head coach of the Crimson Tide women's basketball team, Kristy Curry.
Kristy Curry, who's preparing for another trip to the NCAA tournament. And Coach, Roll Tide, congratulations on earning the bid. How excited are you for Friday against Florida State?
Yeah, we're so excited, incredibly proud of this team. What they've done along the course of the season, from our preseason to our conference season, to put us in a position. It's been an unbelievable ride the last 10 months. We started out with Spain, and then had our preseason, and then to be able to do and to have 10 wins in conference play, put our net in a position. It's been special. So now it's a brand new season and a great opportunity for us to go to Austin and play a really, really good Florida State team.
Going back to that trip to Spain and all the hard work you guys did in the preseason, did you see glimpses that a season like this would be possible to finish top 4 in the league and to get another NCAA tournament bid?
It's interesting, Roger, because when you look at our team this season, we only returned 5 players, 2 starters, and the moment I think it was that second game in Spain, I just thought, wow, and I love their chemistry. They're all about each other in the front of their chest, especially in a day and time where it's a lot of me. This team has been a lot of we. And I think it has started with our leadership group and Aaliyah and Loyal and Sarah Ashley. Those 3 did return a lot of experience. So have been very powerful as leaders with their vocal leadership, their action leadership. And so I'm really blessed. I think they're a great extension of who we want to be every day as a staff, and they've done a really good job with our chemistry all year long.
They really have, and especially the close to the season was so special. As last year, the regular season ended with 3 losses, then a couple losses to close out the year. This year ended with 3 wins to close out the regular season, really starting with that great home effort against Mississippi State.
Yeah, I mean, 3 really good games down the stretch, and then to go to A&M on the road, who is really good, and to be able to finish that. And then the conference tournament obviously left a pretty yucky taste in our mouth for a lot of reasons. That game, it just wasn't a good day, and I think this team since that moment has kind of gathered themselves and just gone back to work. I mean, they're just a hardworking group who love to work and love to do the things that they know they need to do. And obviously losing Jess Timmons early in that game, I thought really affected us. Aaliyah Nye was sick. That's something, I mean, I'm talking, did not feel well at all. So we had a little adversity that day, and that's not excuses. But boy, it was not our day. And I think the way they approached the past week and a half of rest, our hydration, our nutrition, what our strength staff, what our medical staff, and then what they've done with our position coaches. I feel like it's a team that's continued to get better. And so whatever happens in Austin's not going to be because of a lack of effort or a lack of approach or a lack of preparation. We just want it to be a really good day for this program because our kids have invested so much in the journey all season long.
You mentioned losing Jessica Timmons in that game against Tennessee, unavailable coming up for the NCAA tournament. Who may have a larger role? Who else do you look to on this Crimson Tide bench to try and fill the gaps as best you can with Jessica Timmons being out?
Well, Carly Weathers done an unbelievable job all season long. And, early in the season was starting and has come off the bench and played starter minutes all season. She just makes winning plays. She's doing a really good job of shooting the basketball. And I'm excited because I feel like Carly can definitely step up. I think that next step up, I have no doubt Carly will. It's going to come from a Berger Williams. We're going to have more at each spot. Obviously, depth has been a concern for us this season. We've been really blessed up to this point not to have any major injuries. The timing of this isn't great, but at the end of the day, it's going to be somebody else's turn. And that's why you play and practice and prepare. So I think it's going to have to come from a collective effort. It can't just come from one person. Our bench is going to have to play better. Our 5 players are going to have to give us a lot here down the stretch. I mean, we need to be a double-double, especially with the team we're playing, in Austin against Florida State. So it's going to have to come from the committee, as I say. It's got to come by committee.
Taking a look at some of the individual honors for the Crimson Tide this year, starting with the 5-position Essence Cody, who of course came to Alabama with high expectations, being a McDonald's All-America, all the accolades she picked up in the state of Georgia. How did you see her progress through her freshman year to be named freshman team All-SEC?
Well, she just continued to get better. She's brought a tremendous amount of energy every day. She's come ready to learn. It's a difficult league to be thrown into and be a starting 5. I think there was one freshman that she actually went against all season at the 5 spot. When you're playing against 21, 22, 23, you've got the COVID rule in play. I mean, she's had to grow up quickly. And I think she's done an unbelievable job. She is so coachable. She is so sweet. She is just, only scratched the surface too. So we need a big day from Essence Cody here in the NCAA tournament. I know she's excited to play on her first NCAA tournament. It's why she came to Alabama. And she has definitely elevated our post play. And when you say that, I think Gianna Cunningham, has really got to step up. And then you've got Meg Newman, who's got to step up. So, Essence, having the ability to have those 2 around her and kind of help along the way. Naomi Jones was a big loss for us. I think she's got an incredible future. So, we'd love to see Essence and Naomi together on the floor in the future. And that's kind of what we were doing at the time she went down. So Essence is just doing so good, and I'm so proud of her and love coaching her.
Of course, last year we got to see a lot of three-pointers from Aaliyah Nye, but this season, not only are we seeing the three-pointers better than anybody in the SEC, but Coach, we're also seeing her defend, and that's what really led to her being all SEC second team.
Yeah, I mean, she's become one of our best defenders, draws the toughest matchup. She's done a really good job of keeping the basketball in front of her. Her communication, she's a lot more vocal. She really anchors our defense. And a lot of times, we've got the ball stopped and then we're back. And it's going to be really critical to our success against Florida State that we have a great transition defense plan. And, Aaliyah will really anchor that for us. And we're excited. I think she offensively has really taken her game to another level. We've really worked hard on that 3-level score mentality where I'm not just a catch and shoot player, but I can, 1-2 dribble pull up. I'm getting to the rim. She's getting to the free throw line more. So it's something that we continue to develop, and she's constantly in the gym. She's feeling better this week. So that's really important that, she's feeling a lot better than she was about a week and a half ago.
We certainly love to hear that. And of course, the last few years, you really had a coach on the floor in Hannah Barber on the point guard. And this year, Sarah Ashley Barker, she's also talked about maybe down the road, she'd like to be a coach. And she's developed so much in her leadership for this team, her all around game. Just what can you say about her that led to her being first team All SEC?
She's got some grit, some toughness. She's everything that we want to be about at Alabama as far as how hard she works, how hard she goes. And, her maturity and the ability to play the next play has progressed from, last season to this season more than any player I've ever coached. I mean, she has really taken her game to another level, and her leadership. And I think she has had, the opportunity at Georgia, the opportunity at Alabama to see a lot of different leaders and a lot of different people around her. And I think she has, really done an unbelievable job of every single day being willing to say the hard thing. And the reason that you can do that is because of how hard and how much work you're putting in. So your hardest worker has to be a leader. And I will tell you that I think that she, Aaliyah, and Loyal embody that, and we've just been blessed to have leadership by committee, and Sarah Ashley's done an unbelievable job. I'm so proud of the year that she's having and can't wait for the future.
Well, the future starts this Friday with Alabama in the first round of the NCAA tournament against Florida State. Just what have you learned about the Seminoles since Selection Sunday?
Well, they have 2 first-team All-ACC selections. They're unbelievably talented. Obviously, Tanaya Latson really is the everything for them. I mean, she's a phenomenal backcourt player, and they're really good in transition. They do a really good job of playing with a tremendous amount of pace and very familiar with their team. So a lot of these kids in the summer, obviously we're in the same region. Brooke Wyckoff's done an unbelievable job, and to battle what she's battling this season, it's as she's gone along, it has to be one of the best coaches in the country. And I just have a lot of respect for their program, and it's going to be a tough challenge for us, but we're excited about the matchup.
We look forward to getting to Austin as well and seeing the journey that this women's basketball team will take in the NCAA tournament. Coach Curry, just thank you for your time. Best of luck coming up in Austin. Roll Tide.
Thanks, Roger. Roll Tide.
Iron made this place. But in order to take it all home, you need nerves of steel. The big one is back. Get your tickets now at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com.
We look forward to seeing Alabama against Florida State coming up on Friday afternoon in Austin, Texas. Best of luck to Kristy Curry and the women's basketball team. Somebody that's called a lot of Alabama women's basketball games this season, plus men's basketball. Now you're seeing them all over the place in the SEC, even earlier this week in the NIT on ESPN. Richard Hendrix has been a very busy man. He's still keeping up, of course, with his favorite teams here in Tuscaloosa, Crimson Tide men's and women's basketball teams. So we get a preview of March Madness from Richard. Plus, we get to hear about his experience being an SEC legend at the SEC tournament last week in his hometown of Nashville.
It's March Madness. It's time for Hoops with Hendrix. Roger Hoover, pleased to be joined by Richard Hendrix, of course, a former Alabama basketball player, now an analyst for ESPN and the SEC Network. And Richard, I've been saying it for so long, a legendary Alabama basketball player. You were recognized as one of the SEC legends at the tournament last week in Nashville. How was that experience for you and your family?
Well, it was an honor to be recognized with the other recipients as a legend for Alabama. To think back on all of the efforts that my teammates and I and coaching staff all went through when I was a player at the University of Alabama, to be acknowledged of such, it's just a weekend I'll never forget. And to have it with my family there, to see that, it was just a pure joy.
It really is a great honor. What can you tell us about being named an SEC legend? What kind of the week of events you get to be a part of that a lot of us don't get to see?
Well, some of the greatest moments about that was that, with the 14 total players that were receiving the honor, we had a lot of really good moments to sit around and talk about, our playing days, how things were moving forward in our personal lives, our professional lives, talked about old games and battles that we had on the court years ago, and also meeting some players that you've never met before and hearing a little bit of their stories. But it was a lot of fun to sit courtside, watch all the games. I'm a basketball guy. I got to have my family there, and my son was able to join me for several days. So it was a great experience for me personally, and to be acknowledged in front of my family and all of the Alabama fans, and as well as the rest of the people there, to watch a great SEC basketball tournament. It was just an experience that I'll never forget.
Anybody in the Legends class that you played against? You mentioned talking about some old games.
Oh, well, I really talked with Torian Green, the point guard from Florida, on those back-to-back championships in 06, 07. Him and I, we known each other since high school. Got to spend a lot of time talking with Elston Turner, who came a little bit after me, but played at Texas A&M. And he had a really good professional career. And we played in a lot of places that we both were able to talk about things and our experience playing ball overseas, as well as Daryl Mitchell, who was on that LSU Final Four team in 2006. That was headlined by a lot of really good players: Big Baby, Tyrus Thomas, Garrett Mitchell. Sorry, not Garrett Mitchell, but Garrett Temple and Tasman Mitchell. But for me, I always had to have a moment with Daryl Mitchell to let him know I always thought he was the best player on that star-studded team, and it was really good to see him get recognized as such. But all of the 14 guys, as well as Dwayne Curtis from Ole Miss, we had so many battles in the low post, a style of ball you don't see anymore. But it was just a great moment to really talk about those days and to catch up with those guys and get to know them on another level.
That's a really cool recognition. Again, you've been busy, of course, being recognized as an SEC legend. Before we dive into Alabama men's and women's basketball, tell us about your broadcast schedule, who you saw over the weekend or last week and championship week.
I've been on the go a lot. It's been a lot of fun. Got to call a couple of games during Champ Week in DeLand, Florida. Got to see Stetson beat Austin Peay in the ASUN championship game, and now they have their first ever appearance in the NCAA tournament. But of course, they have the reward of being a 16 seed. But at the same time, a lot of fun with that, and I was able to call the SWAC championship game in Birmingham, Alabama, at UAB's Bartow Arena, where Grambling State was able to beat Texas Southern in the final. So a lot of fun calling games, and looking forward to calling a few more games moving forward in the NIT.
We look forward to watching those. Well, Alabama fans are really fired up that both of their teams, men's and women's basketball teams, are in March Madness. We'll start with the men's basketball team. The Crimson Tide, a number 4 seed. You look at last year, number 1 seed. First time the school's been back-to-back, a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. A really tremendous season for the Crimson Tide. I know the regular season, Richard, may not have ended like fans wanted. Everyone wanted that championship, wanted a deep run in Nashville at the SEC tournament, but this is still a really dangerous basketball team getting ready for the big dance.
A dangerous basketball team. And to me, the credit has to go to Nate Oates and his staff. When you talk about replacing 3 assistant coaches that go on to be head coaches in Division I, as well as 2 first-round NBA draft picks in Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, and Charles Bediako electing to go to the professional ranks as well, to have your team in first place with 3 games to go and needing even another bounce, potentially had a share of the SEC on the last game or two, I think was a great finish for this team that a lot of people did not know what the expectations could be. To achieve a double bye in the SEC tournament and then get to the SEC tournament. But unfortunately, not playing the basketball at the strength that they would like to have to finish out the regular season and in the tournament. Some injuries have hampered them a little bit, but you can only hope that the early exit in the SEC tournament is something that can let them regroup, give them a little bit of rest, and get them ready to try to make a push in the NCAAs.
Yeah, how important will rest be for guys like Rylan Griffin, Latrell Reitzel Jr.? We know what they mean to this basketball team.
Huge. I mean, you know, at this point in the season, everybody's nicked up, everyone's banged up. You want to try to be at your best. And if you can get healthy and then get a game under you in the NCAA tournament and hopefully win it and have some momentum, you know, with this team, the way they can shoot the basketball, they can stay in the game with anyone. But the big question mark for Alabama will not be how they're shooting the ball. It will be how they are defending. And recent games, giving up over 100 points per game is a little too much to overcome offensively, and Alabama's going to have to get back to the drawing board to prepare themselves for a Charleston team that can score to try to make a surge and finish their season on a higher note.
For the Crimson Tide, this is now 4 straight years going to the NCAA tournament under Nate Oates. And of course, every time a major job opens around college basketball, his name's one of the first that gets mentioned as a potential replacement. But Alabama earlier in the week locking up Coach Oates to an extension, a huge buyout, but an extension to 2030. What does it mean for the overall health of the program to have your head coach locked in place with such a great deal like Nate Oates now has?
Well, that's great, you know, for the program to have a coach that you know that's going to have the type of continuity that's going to be there. He has a proven record of what he's able to do at Alabama, and to see the commitment that he's showing shows that the program is headed in the right hands. So it's a credit to Greg Byrne for making the hire in the first place, when to many people in the South, he was a relatively unknown, but now he's been able to come into SEC and, quite frankly, the last few years been the top coach and dominated the league. A little slip up at the end of this season from getting another championship, but to have him locked down long term, and with a top recruiting class coming in and potential players returning from this team of a late season of a team that was in first place for the majority of the season, it shows that the future is bright. And it's great to see a coach want to make that commitment.
Staying with the men's side for just a moment, we thought it would be a really interesting SEC tournament with so much parity around the league, and we really saw that with the top 3 seeds all going down on that crazy Friday. Of course, Auburn wins the SEC tournament championship. Just how do you feel about the health of the SEC going into the NCAA tournament? Who do you feel like could have maybe the longest run out of the SEC teams?
Well, the SEC is a deep league, and I've said all year long, it's a wide open league. Anyone can beat anyone. It's all about matchups. And you could see throughout the entire season that it came down to the wire. And then Auburn obviously winning the championship in the tournament, the top 3 seeds going down in day one of their competition. So it's a matter of matchups. Teams have the physicality. They have the coaching ability. They have the talent. And you can only hope for the league that you finally have a team or multiple teams make a long push and a long run in SEC play. Since Auburn in 2019, the first team to have the last team to have a Final Four appearance, and going back to 2012, Kentucky winning the national championship. So a lot of push and a lot of talk that the SEC is the best league. But for me, this is the year that someone has to step up in league play and show why we are considered the best team with the Final Four appearance. And it would be great to have the prize at the end, which would be a national champion. To mention the teams that I think probably have the best shot. Now, of course, I want my Alabama Crimson Tide to be at the end holding up the trophy. They have to make sure that they do a good job defensively, but if they can get playing, shooting the ball well, running, then they can make a run. But when I look at the style of play and the balance, the size, and the momentum of a team of Auburn playing really good basketball right now in SEC play, quite frankly, dominated in the SEC tournament. Janai Broome is playing outstanding basketball on the interior, and the guards are starting to pick it up with the depth that they have. With that and the way that they're able to grind out wins and even outscore you when they need to, they seem poised to make a deep run. But a 4 seed in a tough bracket, they're going to run into UConn potentially after a couple of rounds. But they have the personnel to do it, as well as Tennessee with their depth, as well as their veteran play, Dalton Connect being a top-level scorer, and the experience that they have.
That's on the men's side. We'll shift gears now to the women's side. Alabama women's basketball back in the NCAA tournament for the 2nd straight year, now 3 of the last 4 years under the direction of Kristy Curry. And of course, you and I have teamed up on a lot of SEC Network broadcasts of women's basketball this year here in Tuscaloosa. Just how would you describe the season you saw from Alabama women's basketball?
Well, I thought it was a great season. To come in with question marks when you're losing so much scoring from a team of previous years in leadership with Hannah Barber and Brittany Davis and Megan Abrams. You didn't know where the leadership and the scoring production was going to come from, but Sarah Ashley Barker answered that answer was the answer to that very quickly. The leadership the hustle, the consistent scoring, and the will to win showed that Alabama was a little different this year. And that was great to see that they were able to get it together, that they were able to gel, play strong basketball, have some impressive wins this season, and they're rewarded with that to get an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament and an opportunity to keep taking the program forward.
It's going to be tough for Alabama without the services of Jessica Timmons. She's out for the year with an ACL injury, but now Alabama gets ready to take on Florida State and then potentially a number 1 seed Texas on their home floor this weekend in Austin. Just what's it going to take for Alabama to play some winning basketball this week?
Well, very tough to replace Jessica Timmons. She was a guard who could do so many things. She could run the point, she could score, she could defend, strong body, and could rebound. So it's a situation now that the team is going to have to rally around her absence and pick up their play without her there. But the challenge doesn't get easy when you're going up against Florida State. This is a team 5th in the ACC, went to the semifinals in the ACC tournament, losing to NC State, who's a powerhouse on the women's side. They lost in the championship game. But Tanaya Latson, big time scorer, over 20 points per game, dynamic. She can score in the middle game. She can shoot from outside. She can get the first step on you and get all the way to the cup. She's going to pose a real issue for Alabama. So the focus is going to have to be on her to make it difficult for her to get clean shots, as well as trying to keep Michaela Timpson off the glass, a double-double, 14 points, 10 rebounds per game. That's going to be a major challenge for our freshman Essence Cody. Essence has been playing really good basketball, but foul trouble has been something that has plagued her this entire season. And in order for Alabama to advance past Florida State, Essence Cody has to play to her full potential and stay out of foul trouble. She can do it. And when she does it, she's a force to be reckoned with. But she will have a major challenge in Timpson for Florida State.
It's going to be a lot of fun again. Friday will be busy with the men's and women's teams in action. Richard Hendrix will be all over the place with the NIT. You can catch him on ESPN Family and Networks moving forward. Richard, thank you so much for all the time you've given us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Congratulations again on being named an SEC legend in this men's basketball class this year. And we look forward to catching up with you maybe when all the dust settles on this Alabama basketball season. But thank you again for your time. Roll Tide.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Roll Tide.
NASCAR is returning to one of its most iconic tracks. Be there and experience the energy, the excitement, and the power as drivers battle it out at Talladega Superspeedway for the Geico 500 on April 21st. Lock in your tickets today at TalladegaSuperspeedway.com. As you can tell from our conversation with Richard Hendrix, a lot coming up for Alabama athletics this weekend, so it's time to take a look at our upcoming schedule here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. And as always, it's brought to you by Wickles Pickles. They're wickedly delicious. We have the relish with us on set here in Tuscaloosa. Find out more products that can help elevate your tailgate online at WicklesPickles.com. Let's see what's coming up for the Crimson Tide Sports Network this weekend. On Friday, it's really all happening across Alabama athletics as you have women's basketball, men's basketball, baseball, and softball underway. It'll all get going at 4:30 with the women's basketball game against Florida State in Austin. Then the baseball team, just 30 minutes later, will start its series against Georgia. Softball, again at home against Virginia Tech. We'll have a booth cam presented by Country Financial for that ball game, as well as the game on Saturday. And then men's basketball will be the late game as they'll be playing from Spokane against the College of Charleston. Coming up on Saturday, an early start for the baseball team, 11 a.m. Central at Georgia, then the softball game at 1 p.m. And then hopefully on Sunday, we'll of course see baseball wrap up its series against Georgia, but hopefully men's and women's basketball in the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament. And then coming up on Monday, as everybody starts to head home back to Tuscaloosa, we'll talk about everything on Hey Coach, presented by Alpha Insurance at Baumhauer's Victory Grill here in Tuscaloosa. That's our Wickles Weekend Update for a busy week of Alabama athletics. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR. Huge thank you to our guests, Greg Byrne, Kristy Curry, and Richard Hendrix, as well as they've given us insights on Alabama athletics, plus especially men's and women's basketball. Good luck to Nate Oates, Kristy Curry, and the Crimson Tide starting its run coming up in the NCAA tournament this weekend. As we say goodbye on this episode of Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, we want to take a look back to some booth cam highlights. Of course, Ethan Carabin, who produces this show, also produces our booth cam presented by Country Financial. And over this past weekend, we had some great moments with the booth cam, not only live against Tennessee, but also Tom Canterbury, Gray Robertson got us reaction to the win at Georgia on Sunday, plus everything that's been going on this week at Rhodes Stadium. So here's a look at some of our booth cam highlights as we head out the door on Crimson Drive, driven by NASCAR, and all booth cam highlights presented by Country Financial. Roll Tide, everyone.
Here's a swing and a bouncing ball in the left field for a base hit. This will add to Alabama's lead. Hamiter scores. Gassetti right behind him. He slides in safe ahead of the throw by Dreiling. It's a 2-run single for freshman Justin LeBron. And he, in the bottom of the third, has made it Alabama 6, Tennessee nothing. Top of the 9th inning in Tuscaloosa. 1-1. Swing and a fly ball that's popped up high into shallow center. LeBron, the shortstop, will be under it. He'll make the grab, and this ball game is over. The Alabama Crimson Tide with its first SEC win of the season, defeating the 5th-ranked Volunteers 6-3 on a perfect Saturday in Tuscaloosa. 1-2. Breaking ball swung on and crushed high, deep right field. This game is tied. Will Hodo with a solo home run to the right field Rangers. That has tied this game at 4 in the bottom of the 4th. Swing and a fly ball. High, deep left field. Alabama's in front thanks to Gage Miller. 3-run shot for the Crimson Tide third baseman. And now it's Alabama 7, Tennessee 5 in the 8th. Moza, the 0-2. Swing and a miss, strike 3. The third Sunday in March belongs to the Crimson Tide as Alabama wins this rubber match 7-6 to take the series from the 5th-ranked Volunteers.
This sport, man. You kidding me? Bases loaded, bottom of the 7th, full count, 2 outs. It's about to be somebody's moment.
Crowd to their feet here at the Jack. Beaver looks in. Payoff pitch. Swing and a miss! Strike 3! Caleb Beaver strikes out Fields with the bases loaded, and Alabama wins by a final score of 5-4.
I am deceased. Whose moment? Caleb Beaver. Let's go.
Oh.